Welcome to the Superintendent Podcast with Idaho Superintendent of Public Instruction, Debbie Critchfield. This podcast is a way to highlight important issues in education, success stories in our state, and talk about the work we do at the Idaho Department of Education. Each episode is about 10 minutes long, so we call it the Superintendent.
Today's episode, we have our Idaho Fire Bureau Chief, Josh Harvey, who also happens to be a school board member in St. Mary's. Thank you for joining us. So you got two fantastic things going in your life. We do care about St. Mary's and what's going on in the school, but for today, I want to talk to you about your role with Idaho Department of Lands, where we're doing several episodes where we're talking about the Department of Lands and how the superintendent sits on the land board as a land board commissioner, why we care about those things. And I have just found it to be so fascinating. And you have a very important job in, I guess, I don't know, can you really manage fires? I was going to think, how do I explain exactly what your job is? So rather than me tell, Josh, tell us what you do.
All right. Well, yeah, so I am the chief. It's kind of interesting, I was a fire warden on the St. Joe district for a lot of years, right? And I got to manage a piece of ground. I was responsible for the fire on that piece of ground, basically Benoit County and about half of Shoshone County. And so any wildfire responsibility in that district was my responsibility to put it out, right? And so code, the IDAPA rules, that applies to the entire part of the state. And so as I, moved into this position, super cool job. Now I get to be responsible for basically being ready to fight fire across all private and state lands in the state of Idaho. And so, that means a lot of really cool things like networking. I meet with a lot of fire managers all across the country. And a lot of good people, a lot of passion in this field about fighting fire and keeping the public safe and protecting the natural resources of all of our states. I was born and raised in Idaho. I'm a Sandpoint native, and I migrated south like the geese. I just never went back, and my migration was about 2 hours.
There's a whole beautiful state out there, Josh, just in case you don't know. I'm kidding, because you travel around, and obviously forests are in the north, and so you're gonna be located there. We all know, or I guess people of my vintage and above, remember all of the ads and the ad campaigns around Smokey the Bear and, putting out only you can stop a forest fire. And I mean, I don't think that that's cliche to say that, we have responsibilities. We can't control Mother Nature. We wish we had the telephone number on that one. But what are things that you wish people understood about, and I get not just being dumb out in the summer with fires, but just in general, what are some things that folks don't realize about fire management in the state?
Well, every human-caused fire is preventable. It truly is. I mean, I've seen hundreds, thousands of fires over my career that were caused by us, caused by humans. And in almost every case, if they would have taken one precaution, if they would have taken just an extra minute to look at the weather, it's publicly available information. Google it, right?
Well, it's in our hands now. We have weather apps. Yeah.
Right. That extra 30 seconds to make sure that the chains on our super cool boat, on our RV, are not scraping on the ground. That when I'm out recreating, camping, I took an extra 5 minutes, threw a little extra water on that campfire, stirred it up, Smokey Bear. You mix that campfire up, right? And there's the other ones that a lot of people don't hear about, where you have folks out doing maintenance on fences. They're doing maintenance on equipment out in the woods, out in the ag fields, right? And there's, it's almost in every case, if they would have taken one more little step, one more precaution, that fire wouldn't have started, right? They would have had, if they would have had that fire extinguisher there, maybe it would have happened, right? And then they could have hit it with the fire extinguisher, and it wouldn't have turned into such a big deal. They would have pulled those chains up just a little bit tighter, wouldn't have been sparking going down the Whiteberg grade. those little details. We're in a society where everything happens like right now. I got to get going. I want to get to the woods. I want to go do this. I got a job to do. And so we're moving at the speed of light. And I think a lot of times folks just overlook that one little thing and it comes back and bites them, big time. And then, in some cases, it's devastating. It's devastating to their neighbors, to landowners around them, and it really puts the rest of the state in a bad spot. Um, and the taxpayers of Idaho, you know, don't deserve that burden of the extra cost, right? And taking those resources. And so we have to be the bad guys in some cases, and we bill those folks for it. And it's heartbreaking.
Well, I don't think it's a bad guy. I mean, I want to talk about that a little bit. I mean, obviously we care where our taxpayer dollars go, but a fire year or a fire season is one of the most unpredictable parts of government when it comes to tax dollars. It could be a year where you spend hardly anything, maybe, in the tens of $1,000s. I know that never happens, but let's just say it's, for whatever reasons, a particularly wet year. And we've also seen years where it was a $75 million price tag because the droughts and again, carelessness or just accidents, things happen, Mother Nature as well. Those are big swings. And so how do you predict or say I mean, really, you're like throwing a dart at a dartboard. Well, we think it's going to be in this range. I don't know. Maybe you play like budget bingo. What's it gonna look like? How do you do that?
Well, we spend a lot of time over the course of the winter, and especially as we get into later spring months, looking at all the data that we can get our hands on. How much snow did we get? How much moisture is in the ground? What do the creeks across Idaho look like? Are they running with water? How fast did the snow melt? Was there a lot of ice this year? How early did the ground freeze in November? If the ground froze in November, did we get a bunch of rain afterwards? All that rain ran off. Did we get rain before it froze? And so all that rain absorbed. We look at so many different environmental factors, and we as an agency, we kind of come to our own conclusions, and then we backstop that. We check it with folks out of NIFC, truly qualified, experienced meteorologists. They look at the same things. They look at different metrics, and we compare. We have conversations, and in that June land board, um, we put it all together, and we come forward with the best data that we've got. We come forward with the best estimate that we can have for what does fire season look like. And this year we came into this spring, and we have a saying around here that we start getting hot and dry, and things start popping off. This isn't good. And we went into the June land board meeting looking at all the metrics and the data, and it's like, man, this isn't good. This
Well,
is
I remember reading on the report in that meeting, as of June 30, or no, excuse me, it was May 30.
Yeah.
Anyhow, it was, I don't, anyway, something like, I'm going to mess it up. I shouldn't even guess while we're doing this, but something like $9 million had already been spent towards fighting fires. Does that number sound right?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact number.
I know, but it was high because I thought, are we even really in fire season? By the way, listeners, please don't quote me on that. We'll find the exact one, but it was millions of dollars had already been spent, and we were not even in really fire season. I love that you're talking about the science that goes behind how you make, I guess, predictions or just make recommendations on what you think it's going to look like. One of the things that you and I have talked a lot about is introducing this whole world to our high school students and creating more pathways for students to see that there are a lot of opportunities, not only in actually putting on a backpack and going and fighting the fires, but in every part, whether you're in a plane that's spraying retardant, or you're part of the meteorology that figures it out, or estimating the water levels, that this whole biosphere of managing fires takes in so many jobs and so many ways to approach this that I don't know that most of our kids recognize that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I just throwing a number on the wall, there's probably 100 different career fields related to fire and forest management, all the way down to your diesel mechanics, right? That are working on the machines with the loggers that are helping to manage the forest. You manage those forests, you're reducing the risk of catastrophic fire. The folks working with the data that are feeding the information to the meteorologists, the dispatch center folks, not like you said, not everybody has to be out there sucking smoke and digging lines, sawing, doing all that sort of good stuff. Um, and even spotters, the folks that are in the plane, they don't even have to be a pilot, but they're up there spotting fires. The pilot field, oh man, the statistics out there on the need for aircraft pilots right now is incredible. That job field, there is such a demand for young people coming into the workforce to become a pilot. And if you're a thrill seeker, maybe flying an airline passenger isn't it necessarily in your wheelhouse, but I can tell you what, you get into a single engine air tanker or a helicopter and you're flying on a raging forest fire.
Yeah, that's adrenaline for some people, and terrifying and sheer torture for most everybody else. You and I are talking about how we create these pathways, not only in the north and north central Idaho, but everywhere, because as you've pointed out, so many opportunities for our students. As we get looking towards now eyeing the ends of the fire season, what's something that you'd like to put out there for people to know and understand?
Well, I think the biggest thing for folks, we get to August, we start getting towards the end of August, and I think a lot of folks are like, "Oh, summer's over. We're getting back to school." And maybe that risk isn't there, that threat isn't there. Historically, the historical norms for the state of Idaho, we don't truly get into fire season until we're in August. And that really rolls through September. The fuels are cured out. The days are typically drier than normal. The humidity's down. And the thing we do have working in our favor is the days do start getting shorter, right? We start losing some of that daylight, but the threat remains all the way through until we get like 2 weeks solid of a steady rain. We call them season-ending events. And when we have a season-ending event, then we can breathe a little easier. And it's like, all right, let's grab some time, let's take some vacation, right, if we can. Um, but until we get to those monsoonal type moistures, that season-ending event, uh, a shot of rain overnight, it's not going to make much of a difference right now. And so, folks, as we're heading into hunting season, that's a big thing. As we get into hunting season, that threat is very, very real. So, my biggest word of caution to your listeners, your viewers, um, stay vigilant until we're like soaked across the state, and it's going to take time for that to happen.
I think that's fantastic advice. And we're going to have you come back for many reasons, because I think this is always fascinating. We we thank you, and what IDL does for state lands. The federal lands management, that's a whole different podcast that we'll talk about a different time. But understanding the beautiful state that we live in and the great people that work to support it, to keep us safe, to keep the land what it is and usable, and to reduce the cost of the taxpayer. What you do, Josh, is just fantastic and amazing, and I thank you for that, along with your volunteer service on the school board. So I hope you'll come back and talk with us again.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I could, just a huge shout out, all of our firefighters out there. I hope they keep their heads on a swivel, stay safe, and they're out there kicking butt, doing a really tough job, and super proud of them.
And we appreciate them and their families that support them doing it, so that I don't have to, you probably do get a backpack on, but not everyone's able to do that job. It's a hard job. So
Yeah.
Josh Harvey, thank you so much for being here. And again, all that you do for our state. Our guest on this episode of the podcast has been Idaho Department of Land Bureau Chief Josh Harvey. The Superintendent podcast is produced by the Idaho Department of Education. Episodes are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. They can also be streamed on YouTube and the department's website, sde.idaho.gov. Until next time, I'm Superintendent Debbie Critchfield. Thank you for listening.